and welcome back to another episode of Klartext Triathlon. Today I speak with the American pro triathlete and medical student Matthew Marquardt. And now, first of all, a small commercial break. Today's episode is proudly brought to you by the OMNi-BiOTiC Klartext Triathlon 2024. Are you ready for the ultimate triathlon experience in the stunning city of Graz, Austria? Save the date for the OMNi-BiOTiC Klartext Triathlon on the 25th of August 2024, an event that caters to both seasoned professionals and passionate age group athletes. Picture this, a thrilling swim down the Mur River right in the heart of the city, a 90-kilometer bike ride through picturesque vineyards in the Graz region with a fully closed route for your safety, and a city half marathon comprised of 3 accelerating rounds. But that's not all. You will be in a esteemed company with a lot of renowned triathletes. There is even a professional race classified as a PTO silver event with a 20-meter drafting rule on the bike. You will be racing alongside the pros, feeling the excitement up close. Our motto is simple yet powerful. From athletes for athletes, we understand your needs and prioritize your experience. Here is what you can look forward to. Fair registration fees, an exceptional event venue, special goodies for all participants, and an unforgettable after-race party. So, don't let this opportunity pass you by. Join us at the OMNi-BiOTiC Klartext Triathlon and make unforgettable memories. Register today and be a part of something extraordinary. We'll see you at the finish line. End of commercial break. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Klartext Triathlon. Today we have a very special guest with an incredible life story, the American pro triathlete Matthew Marquardt. He came into triathlon in 2021. In 2022 he became Ironman Age Group World Champion, and in 2023 he finished in the 11th position at Ironman Worlds in Nice. I'm already really excited to talk to you, Matthew. Great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to chat and share a little bit more about myself and I guess geek out on triathlon a little bit, as well as other things that I do.
Yeah, I'm really excited about our topics today. But my first question is always kind of boring. How are you today? You are in London at the moment. What are you doing there?
Correct. So I'm having a good day. It's about 10 in the morning and it got up and did some dry land and did some swimming. So now I'm just kind of settling in to get some work done for the day. But yes, I'm in England for a very short trip because I decided to go to the next quote unquote level of triathlon, and I came over here to do some aerodynamic testing at the wind tunnel in Silverstone. So I'm in Silverstone right now, and it's been super cool to be in kind of the heart of Formula One for most of the world.
Oh, that's great. And I'm sure that you will be a little bit faster next year on the bike. And you are already quite fast on the bike, as you showed that at the Ironman Florida a few weeks ago, I would say.
Yes. So I definitely have gotten a lot better on the bike since I started, and I'm still working there, and I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now, but I also know that there's a lot more to be gained. I could see from a couple races this year that I just knew that the aerodynamics were kind of a weak point for me. I had gotten a bike fit before, but at the end of the day, general rules do not always apply when it comes to wind dynamics and kind of air resistance and things like that. So I knew that in order to really dial in my aerodynamics and make myself as fast as possible, I would need to kind of make the investment to come over here and get in a wind tunnel for a little bit.
That is definitely the right choice. And I always have the impression that some athletes from America, Canada, and I already talked to a few of them, have a worse aerodynamics compared to European athletes. And so I think that has to change so that the American athletes are successful again, like in the past.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the word on the street, and I think that that's probably true. I mean, my best kind of explanation for that is that really the soul of cycling is in Europe, not in the US. And so there's just much better infrastructure, whether that be velodromes or wind tunnels, for as well as the expertise in Europe for kind of doing all this aerodynamic stuff than in the US. And so unfortunately, that means that it's a quite expensive trip for me to come over, because not only is it the time in the tunnel, but it's also the airfare and the lodging and the rental car and everything. So it makes it hard for Americans and Canadians to get over. But I definitely kind of have seen exactly what you're talking about. And so I'm trying to get ahead of it and, improve my aerodynamics so that hopefully I can be competitive with the best of the best.
Your trip will be worth the effort. I'm convinced of that. But now, as you know, the majority of my audience is still German. I would like to change that, but let's make sure that our audience gets to know you a little bit better. So could you please introduce yourself briefly and share some key aspects of your personal background?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I were to give a short 90-second elevator pitch of myself, I'd say that my name is Matthew Marquardt, and I'm a medical student at The Ohio State University in the United States. One day I hope to become a head and neck cancer surgeon. And I really want to focus on two kind of areas during my future career as a doctor, which is cancer and improving cancer outcomes, as well as doing research and leveraging lessons from athletics to improve the performance of surgeons in the operating room, as well as cancer patients and cancer treatments. So that's kind of what I do as my main job, is a medical student and a medical researcher. And then triathlon, being a pro triathlete is my hobby that obviously takes a significant amount of time. And I got into the sport 2.5 years ago, kind of by chance. And I've been incredibly fortunate to have a very fast rise to the top of the sport. And now I'm a pro triathlete and really doing my best to kind of balance both. Because I think having a balance between triathlon as well as other work that I do really kind of gives my life more purpose, as well as it just, I think it's a competitive advantage, to be perfectly honest. You can only do so much training in a given day, and being able to focus on something other than just triathlon, I think is really advantageous. Although the stress of being a medical student definitely has some downsides. So that's the main thing. I guess a couple other aspects of me are I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, which is kind of in the middle portion of the United States. And I was mainly a swimmer growing up. I swam at the U.S. Olympic Trials in 2016. And then I swam for Princeton University through college, and kind of started triathlon the last spring semester of college. And then I've been doing triathlon for the last 2 years of med school. And somehow I've figured out how to balance both, even though even myself, I thought it was an impossible task when I first started med school to do both triathlon and medical school at the level that I'm doing. So it's been a ton of fun. And, I think that there's still a lot of room for me to grow within the sport and improve. And so I think that's super exciting, and really just kind of enjoying it as much as I can. And I hope that, kind of one of my overall missions is to use triathlon as a way to make an impact in the world, especially in the world of cancer. And so that's kind of why my main title sponsor is the cancer hospital at my medical school. And I, do some cancer awareness and things like that as well, kind of through social media, and also kind of through some of my efforts in the Ohio region, because I think it's important to do things for other people instead of just for yourself. So.
Yeah, I was really impressed by your biography. And in triathlon, it sometimes seems to me that the people are very selfish and often focus on just themselves. And in order to have success, I am convinced that this is sometimes necessary. But I also think that triathletes should give something back to their families, for example, but also to the society. And you are a great role model in my eyes for that.
Well, thank you so much, and I couldn't agree more. About a year and a half ago, when it you know, came clear that I might have a future as a professional triathlete, that's one of the things that I thought about a lot is, how can I do this for more than just myself, and have kind of a bigger role than, just making money or pushing sponsors or anything like that. And so I think I'm still crafting exactly how that looks like. And, we'll kind of mature into that some more. But, I think I have a good start so far. And yeah, I think, triathlon, and I think a lot of professional sports, there's this really interesting dynamic where professional athletes are kind of selfish and kind of self-centered, and I agree with you. I think that there is an aspect of that that probably helps performance, to kind of be that self-centered, but I also think it's a loss of potential in order to have a greater impact on society. So hopefully I can figure out how to make it a performance enhancer, instead of just, kind of being the oddball in the mix. But yeah, that's kind of my main goal is, how can we use sport to make a difference and make the world a little bit better place?
Yeah, you show that both is possible, success in sport, but also giving something back to the society. And you already mentioned that cancer plays a significant role in your life. Could you share the personal importance of cancer in your life and your commitment to fighting it?
Yes, absolutely. So, kind of the backstory is I've had a fair number of friends and family, in my life who have battled cancer, some of them multiple times. And that's kind of where I kind of got started. So, when I was a freshman in high school, one of my childhood friends was diagnosed with pediatric leukemia. And I kind of watched her go through her treatment process. And at that time, I guess my craziness or grit or whatever you want to call it kind of came through, and I decided that I wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, as a way to kind of raise some money and kind of give her some little extra motivation and something else to focus on. And so when I was 15 years old, I summited Mount Kilimanjaro in 2013 and also raised a little over $6,000 for a cancer charity in the U.S. called Make-A-Wish. Make-A-Wish is a really big organization in the U.S. and what they do is they grant wishes, for kids undergoing cancer as a way to motivate them and give them something to look forward to as they go through their cancer treatment. And so these things can be like a trip to the Bahamas or a Disney cruise or to be able to meet Michael Jordan, to be an astronaut for a day. I mean, there's this whole wide range of things that kids can wish for. And my friend was given a wish trip. And so it was really awesome to kind of give back to that organization as a way to say thanks. And so that was kind of the start of my foray into cancer and awareness and whatnot. And then kind of since then, I've had different family members and whatnot get cancer, all like the whole spectrum. We've had blood cancers, prostate, pancreatic, lung cancer. I mean, like pretty much everything has kind of touched different friends and families. And so that's kind of why I'm a little bit more, what we would call like agnostic. I'm not like, there's some people that focus just on breast cancer or just on lung cancer in terms of their fundraising, whereas I kind of want to focus on cancer more as a whole, from an awareness standpoint,
Yeah.
because I think that that there's a lot of good to kind of just being a more of a generalist approach, to it. So that's kind of my main backstory, and that kind of sparked my interest as well as being a cancer doctor. Um, and so it's just kind of been a really awesome, mutually beneficial kind of uh, mix of things to be able to do triathlon and raise cancer awareness. And that's kind of the field that I want to focus on more. So it's awesome that everything kind of feeds into itself.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts on it because many triathletes, their body works. Usually they are healthy, but I had some health issues the last 6 years, and now I know that health is a gift, and it's not something that you can expect. So that changed my mindset a lot in the last years. That's my first thought. And what is really impressive, you even made a biking tour across America in 2021 for fundraising against cancer. Tell us more about it.
Absolutely. So, my bike for St. Jude was another one of my crazy ideas that I never really expected to happen. But the backstory is it was the fall of 2020. And so COVID-19 was still really having a significant impact on the world. And it had canceled my senior swim season. So here I am in like November. My last swim season had just been canceled, and we're just about to go into our winter break period. And so for the first time in my life, I had like 4 weeks where I had no obligations. Like I didn't have any swimming. I didn't have any academic requirements. Well, I had some academic requirements, but they didn't have to be fulfilled during that time. I could push them off a little bit. And so I kind of thought like, okay, what is something that I've always wanted to do and never had the time to do before? And so that kind of got me thinking, and a lot of things were kind of checked off or crossed off because of COVID-19 restrictions. But one thing that was not was biking across the US. And so 3 weeks before I started the bike ride, I went to my parents and said, hey, would one of you support me in doing this bike ride? I have no idea if I'm actually capable of doing it. I had only ridden about 80 miles for my longest bike ride ever at that period of time. And given the timeline, I would need to average about 110 miles of biking every single day in order to get across the US in the short period of time that I had. And, my dad, being an amazing person, stepped up and said that he would support me. And so the day after Christmas, we started our drive out to California. And then on December 30th, I left for I left from San Diego and started biking across the US. I pretty much stayed as far south as possible. And 20 days later, which was actually 3 days ahead of schedule, I turned up in Jacksonville, Florida, and had completed my bike trip across the US. So I averaged about 130 miles a day, and I only took one rest day, and I had like one half day because of snow during part of it. And it was an awesome experience. And while I did that, I also ended up raising about $15,500 for pediatric cancer research at a cancer hospital in the US. So, again, like, I think the coolest thing about that trip is that I went into it and didn't really have super high expectations. I actually was looking for something to push me to the point of failure, to be perfectly honest. So when I started that trip, I would give myself like a 50% chance of finishing, either because maybe my body physically couldn't do it, or maybe I would get unlucky and there would be rain or like weather conditions that would prevent me from doing it, or maybe my bike would break, or like there's a whole host of things that could have stopped me from doing it. And same thing with the fundraising. Like, part of me initially didn't want to do the fundraiser because I was like, well, like, what if I don't finish the ride? Or, what if I don't raise a lot of money? And I kind of just, swallowed my pride, or whatever, if you want to say that, and was just like, you know what, even if I raise only $500, that's more than nothing, and that's worth it. So I decided that I would try and raise some money, and it was way more successful than I ever thought. And so that was a really cool experience. And that bike ride was really what kind of started me in triathlon, because after that I was like, well, I'm bored now. Like, give me something else to do. And so I signed up for a half Ironman, and really with only the expectation of doing one. And then here I am 2.5 later, having done I don't know how many races at this point, and being a professional and doing some pretty cool things while I do that. So it's been quite the journey, and I think really the moral of the story of it is sometimes when one door closes, like 5 more doors open if you keep your eyes open and you take advantage of the new opportunities that come your way.
It's just an amazing story. And I made a bike tour last year from Munich to Leipzig in 3 days. I averaged around 150K a day and I enjoyed it so much. I could really feel the freedom. What did you learn about yourself during that trip?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I actually, did a lot of kind of reflecting. I was by myself about, 8 or 9 hours a day. The only real time that I would interact with my dad was in the morning, and then he would stop for lunch and bring me some food, and then at the end of the day. And but we, but so most of the time was by myself. And I think one of the most important things that I learned about myself, and I guess kind of the world during that time, is that your attitude really has a huge difference on the way things work. So like, and I think this applies to Ironman a lot, where it's sometimes when things are really hard, it's really easy to kind of have a bad attitude or kind of get down. And the main thing that I've learned is that makes things just like 10 times harder. Being happy or trying to have a positive attitude isn't going to automatically make everything great. But it certainly can make the hard things a little less challenging. So that was kind of one of the biggest things that I learned. And then another thing that I learned as well is that I kind of have a motto that there will always be something. And what I mean by that is there will always be something to kind of mess up your plans or slow you down. And so really, I think kind of the main lesson is not expecting or not hoping for that perfect day, or, in terms of triathlon, that perfect race, but expecting the unexpected and knowing that really kind of what defines you is not, all the things that go right, but how you respond to when things go wrong. I think was kind of the other big lesson from the trip. So
I completely agree. And doing an Ironman and doing a bike tour like this, I think that are quite similar things. And now let's talk about your way into triathlon because it's very untypical, I would say.
yeah, I would agree with you. So the best way to explain it is that I stumbled into triathlon, and that I really had no intention of being as good or being in the sport as long as I have been. So basically, as I said, I did that ride across the country, and then I finished and I had one more term left of my senior year and kind of wanted something to train for. Like I wasn't necessarily looking for another sport. I was very content with being done as a competitive athlete. I had spent the last, 10 plus years competing at the highest level for swimming. And I wouldn't say that I was tired of it, but I was just very at peace with the idea of being done as an athlete and moving on to the next part of my career. So I really did not intend on doing triathlon more than that first race. And so actually that first race, I borrowed someone's bike. I borrowed a triathlon bike and I didn't even have like a lot of the gear. I kind of tried to do it with the minimal stuff to be somewhat competitive. And I ended up getting fourth in that first race and qualified for 70.3 Worlds in 2021. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, what do I do? So I decided to sign up for 70.3 Worlds with the intention of that being truly my last race. Because at that point, I was going to be 6 weeks into medical school. And really, in the US, medical school is so challenging and so time consuming that, most people think it's pretty impressive if you can work out an hour a day consistently, because you just spend so much time studying. So the concept of me training 15 or 20 hours a week I was like, there's no chance that that's doable. And so I was like, I could do that for 6 weeks. I could do that for 6 weeks. Like I could, do sacrifices to swimming or be just super focused for 6 weeks and make it work. And then after that, I'll be done. So that was my plan. And then I went to 70.3 Worlds and got second in my age group. Um, and, so then it was like, okay, like, it's one of those things where I almost like didn't want to believe that I had done as well as I had, as weird as that sounds. Because now I had this hard choice to make of, okay, well, do I try and do both triathlon and medical school, or do I just kind of, forego this potential path in triathlon and just go back to medical school and focus on medicine only. Because again, not trying to be critical of, the US, but medicine is such a hard career in such a kind of intellectually competitive field that prior to this, I didn't really think that there was any place for being an athlete in medicine. I didn't really think that there would be any respect for it. Or if anything, I thought that people would look down on me for being an athlete, as well as a medical student. And thankfully, that assumption was incorrect. I talked to a lot of different mentors within medicine, and they were pretty much universally like, hey, no, if you can be really good at triathlon, you should do this. And so with their encouragement, I decided to train full time for a winter and give my coach one season to see if I'd truly be any good or not, or if I would, if I had potential to be a pro, or if I was just going to be a good age grouper. And so that was 2022. And I think 2022 showed pretty conclusively that I had potential to be competitive as a pro. I raced I raced 5 times. I did 3 Ironmans and 2 half Ironmans, and I won 4 of those races, including Kona. And then I got 3rd at 70.3 Worlds, which was a really competitive race. And I also had a couple things not go my way. I had 2 different mechanicals during the race. And that pretty much cost me the win because I was only 45 seconds back from top. So I had a super competitive year. And so at that point, again, conclusively showed like, hey, you may not have wanted this, but you're good at this sport, so you should continue. And so, at that point, I was very committed to triathlon and really believed in my potential. And so, decided to go pro this year and had really an incredible pro year. I think I'll finish off 20th among the PTO rankings, and I was 11th at Nice and first out of the water at Nice. So a lot of things that, once again, never thought would ever be kind of something that I would do. So it's been a ton of fun, and looking forward to continuing to improve and continuing to learn within the sport and hopefully, get on top of the podium someday instead of just being on it.
It's just incredible. I know so many athletes, they train for 10 years or more and they don't manage to go sub 10 hours on the Ironman. And you were training for 1 year and you finished in Kona in first position with a time of 8 hours 35. And in 2023, you finished 2 Ironmans with times of 7 hours 45 and 7 hours 44. So such big improvements within 2 years. I could not imagine that. So how do you explain your talent, or how do you explain your big achievements in those 2 years?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I'll say is that my rapid improvement curve, I do my best not to take it lightly, because I do know that a lot of people and a lot of pros even, will spend years before they're at the level of being a pro. And so the fact that I've been able to just kind of leapfrog that, jump all of that, is really special. And I think, kind of my rapid improvement curve comes down to 3 main things. So first is that while I was predominantly a swimmer growing up, I also had a background in other sports. So I was very much a multi-sport athlete in a different sense of the definition, where I played football, European football, or soccer in the US. I played lacrosse, and then I did cross country and track, and then I did swimming. And then I would also bike on the weekends with my parents just for fun. So, I kind of had the ingredients to be a triathlete from a pretty young age, but never put them all together, and really focused on swimming through college. And so I kind of had all the pieces together, and really the last 2.5 years I've kind of seen as definitely have been a result of just kind of refining those pieces and putting them all together, as well as having improvements And then, so that's number one. And then number two, I give an incredible amount of credit to my coach. My schedule is not easy to deal with. He has to be really creative with how he fits in time for me to train. It's not like he just has full latitude to tell me whatever he wants. I basically tell him like, hey, this day I have 2 hours to train. This day I have 3. This day I only have 1. And he then takes that and creates a training plan for me. And so the fact that he's been able to kind of balance that and keep me healthy and keep me improving, I give an incredible amount of, kudos to him for that. And then the last thing I think that's most important that really anyone can do is just consistency. So I think particularly in a sport like triathlon, where a big part of how good you are is how fit you are, showing up every day and doing your workouts is really a key part of it. And it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to knock the workout out of the park. You don't have to have your best ever workout every day, but it's that showing up every single day and doing what you're supposed to do. That's really what gets you better. And so even during some of my hardest exam periods, my busiest times of studying, I always still manage to get at least one hour, maybe 2 hours in of something, because it's that consistency that builds on itself. So that's kind of the third thing that I think has been really key to my success. So
I agree. You don't need big bike tours every day or very high intense sessions every day. The consistency is really the key, and I remark that in my own training as well. And tell us a little bit more about your coach. Who is your coach, and what is his approach to coaching?
Yeah, so my coach is Andrew Yoder, who's based out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I kind of really was just really lucky to find him. One of my college swim teammates had been training with him during COVID, kind of doing some cross training, and just had really really positive things to say about him. So I decided that I would reach out to him. When I signed up for that first Ironman, I took the approach that I think a lot of triathletes do, which is I'm going to train myself, save some money, train myself, and whatnot. And I did that for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then realized that probably wasn't the best thing. I would pretty much just get on the bike and go as hard as I could for 2 hours, or go out for a run and go really hard for 6 miles. And I kind of realized that probably wasn't the most effective way to train. And so that's why I decided to reach out to a coach. And as well, I think, especially now as a medical student, I don't have time to sit down and write my workouts and figure out what I want to do, nor do I have the time to become an expert in learning about training. And so what has been really great about Andrew is he has that expertise. He used to be a pro triathlete, pro Ironman triathlete. And so he has the experience. He understands the dynamics of what racing at the top level is like. And he also has a lot of maturity from things that he probably didn't do as well during his career. And so that's been really great to learn from. And really kind of his main focus is the consistency, and just give me the best that you can. And it's much better to get a quality workout in than get a really big workout that's not as high of quality. So those are kind of the central tenets. And then I think as well, one of the big sayings or what that we kind of have together is don't force it. So there are definitely some days where it doesn't happen very often, but there are some days where I'm super stressed because of school, or really really broken down from training and or school, not getting enough sleep, and I'll get on and try and start a hard workout, and it just won't be there. And so I'll just be okay, this isn't worth it today. Let's either, try again later today, or let's just postpone it till tomorrow. And he's been really supportive of that. And then kind of recently in the past year or so, the thing that's been really valuable is we have started training with lactate. And I think that's been really positive for me. Being a medical student, kind of understanding the physiology of how the lactate cycle works and kind of what the number means more so than just the number has been, advantageous for me. So I can kind of really make sure. And then also more so than anything is that it really helps me make sure that I am pushing hard enough, but not too hard. Kind of one of the things I was known for, especially in swimming, was kind of going hard all the time. I definitely pride myself on my work ethic. But for Ironman, just being, going out super hard is not necessarily smart. And so lactate has really helped us fine tune the training and really make sure that I'm in the right metabolic zone and that we're really training the right effort levels. And I think that's a big part of the reason why we saw significant improvements from last year. Like even from last year, we saw a lot of improvements this year was by incorporating that lactate training. So.
Yeah, there is a famous German triathlon coach, Philipp Seib, the husband of Laura Philipp, and also one of the most famous triathlon coaches in the world. And he always says, training is science, coaching is art. And I completely agree with that. And it seems to me that you and your coach, a quite scientific approach. Do you also see some disadvantages of that scientific approach?
I think the big thing with a scientific approach, especially something that, I think sports science, one of the things that's really cool about it is that it's on the cutting edge. Some of the things that we're doing in sports science are not necessarily what we would call 100% evidence backed in medicine. So what I mean by that is in medicine, we like our randomized controlled trials and 100 different people to have proven that an experiment was a success before you actually adopt it into clinical practice. Whereas sports science is much more focused on like, okay, let's take 10 people, do a little experiment and see if it works. Or sometimes it's more just anecdotal of like, hey, I think that this worked. Let's try that. And so I'm not saying that it's pseudoscience in any regard, but I'm saying that sports science is definitely not necessarily like guaranteed to work. And so the downside of that is that if you confine yourself too much to a given theory or thought process, you could potentially be doing yourself more harm than good. And so I think really the key aspect of that is staying curious and really kind of experimenting and tweaking things on yourself. So one of the things that I've talked about before, posted about, is kind of my use of a glucose monitor. And I found glucose monitors to be incredibly valuable because it enables me to experiment with the different, gels and fuels that I use and the different fueling strategies. And that kind of directly plays in with lactate because a key aspect of keeping lactate low is making sure that you're properly fueled and properly hydrated. So like, I think like as long as you have a very curious mindset and also a critical mindset, by that, I mean, like, don't necessarily believe everything you hear first time, kind of do your extra research. I think that having more of a scientific approach can be beneficial. But like, I definitely think, there's always the potential to become too focused on it. I've heard arguments for not using a power meter in a race and going more off feel. I think there's some value to that because, hopefully in a race, like, you are able to push more or find something deeper than what you can do in training. And so if you're, sticking purely to the numbers, then you might not reach your full potential in the race. But at the same time, if you like overdo it, then like, you could end up doing much worse than you would have if you had, kind of been a little bit more scientific to it. So, I guess if anything, I think we're like 80% scientific, 20% art in our approach, which I think is a good balance to have. Because I think, if you're too analytical and too focused, then that can be a bad thing.
I agree. You need kind of mixture of both approaches. And sometimes it's a little bit like trial and error, but I think you always have to focus on the science as well, because in the last years we had some big improvements in triathlon due to science. That's at least my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think the a lot of the improvements we've seen in the sport come from scientific improvements in terms of the aerodynamics on the bike, the shoes that we wear, the wetsuits that we wear, but also like the fuel. Like, a Martin gel is way, way, way higher tech than things that they were doing even 10 years ago. Like I've heard of people that would have candy bars while biking because like it was like a source of high calories or peanut butter or something like that. Whereas like now you're like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense. And so I think that the scientific improvements that have been made are key really to the improvements in the sport that we've had throughout, as well as the changes and improvements we've had in how you train.
Yeah, I talked to Faris Al Sultan, and he told me that during his time as a pro triathlete, he fueled with 2 liters of cola during the bike leg of an Ironman. So unbelievable. Nowadays, you cannot imagine that anymore. Even the age groupers have their own professional fueling strategy. And yeah, the sport has developed, and you have to go with that development.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, to be the best athlete and to be the best triathlete requires you to be on the cutting edge. Well, to not only be incredibly physically fit, but also to be on the cutting edge of the scientific advancements. Because at a certain point, if you don't have the best bike or you don't have the best gear, you're just not going to be competitive.
Absolutely. But now let's talk a little bit more about your medical background. How does your medical knowledge assist you in sports?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that it just increases the awareness that I have for my body. When something's not going right, I have much more of a scientific, methodical mindset of kind of figuring it out of what's going wrong. So, maybe I have a bad day of training. It's not just like, oh, shoot, I didn't do well today. You know, what could be wrong? Like, I'll just try again tomorrow or hope that tomorrow is better. It's like, okay, I didn't have a good training session today. What's been different in the past couple of days? Okay. So maybe I didn't drink enough. Okay, well, what's the impact of dehydration on my performance? Is that causing it? Or maybe I didn't sleep enough. Is that causing it? So there's just like a very analytical mindset to how I approach it that helps. And then also, training is really kind of physiologically based with the lactate. And so understanding how different inputs, how fueling, how hydration, how sleep, how all of that impacts kind of my lactate during a workout session enables me to kind of optimize my training in that regard. So that's definitely been really helpful, kind of being a med student and whatnot, kind of training and racing and whatnot. But I also think that there can be a downside to it because I know what can happen to the body if you push too far. And so sometimes I almost have to turn off that voice in my head saying like, hey, like if you overdo this, these bad things are going to happen because, you know, really the key to athletic success is being right at that limit. And so if you hold yourself back too much, you're never going to find that limit and you're never going to find your potential. So there's definitely a balance to both.
Yeah, and at the moment, I'm thinking about Sarah True, who collapsed in 2019 at Ironman Frankfurt, not far from the finish line, only 800 meters or something like that. And for me, it was kind of shock seeing her on the ground, really suffering. And yeah, how do you deal with those situations? Do you have some kind of fear to get in such a situation during an Ironman because of your medical knowledge?
I think more so than anything, it really comes down to planning well. So I have a really good understanding of what my body needs in terms of fuel as well as hydration. And so really it comes down to having a good plan before the race starts and then also executing that plan. I think a lot of athletes will come into a race and they might have a plan, but then as soon as the gun goes off, they forget about the plan and they kind of just go by feel or whatnot. Whereas I'm very strategic in terms of when I eat, when I drink, and making sure that I get in enough calories so that, hopefully that will never happen. I think for me, if anything, like there's the thing that I can work on better is probably the mental side of it of, like when everything's screaming to tell you to stop, to really kind of turn that down and just go. I think I can do a little bit better job of that, but hopefully I never get into a position where my body is shutting down either due to overheating or dehydration or lack of fuel, because those are all things that are relatively easy to control, as long as you plan and you know yourself well enough ahead of time. So hopefully I'll never get into that situation, but you never know.
You never know, but of course, I hope that you will never be in such a situation. And you became Ironman Age Group World Champion in Hawaii 2022, and then you made the switch to pro triathlon. So could you share the highs and the lows of your triathlon season 2023? I think it was quite successful.
Yes, no, I've had an incredibly successful 2023. Much better than I ever expected. I'll finish the year with 3 Ironman podiums, as well as, an 11th at Ironman World Championships Nice, a first out of water at Ironman Nice, and then a 14th place position at the PTO US Open. So really successful year, and definitely way better than my expectations. I didn't really have any specific goals for the year besides maybe just qualifying for Nice. So the fact that I, got 3 podiums was like amazing. I think overall, I don't know. So I think overall the year was mainly highs. I think, I had some lows in that. I think that Nice could have gone better. I did not really execute the bike as well as I had hoped to. I overdid the front half, even though I knew that was I knew not to overdo the front half, but it was just kind of the way the course was. It was so easy to overdo the front half. So I kind of accidentally did that, even though I was really trying not to. So I think that, I could have executed World Championships a little bit better, but I'm really proud at how I finished. I got off the bike at Nice and was probably in one of the darkest places I've been in terms of racing, and that I truly did not think that I had the physical capacity to finish the race. I really never want to DNF a race, because I think that, out of respect for my competitors, that's the least that I can do is finish. But I truly physically thought I could not finish the race. But somehow I, one step at a time, I got through the marathon and actually, ticked off six people, and finished 11th in that race. So, that was definitely a low, kind of coming off the bike and being like, shoot, I messed up and whatnot. And then, I don't know. I mean, I just think by the end of the season, I was pretty tired. Kind of going into Florida, I was ready for the off season. I know a lot of pro triathletes do 5 races in a year or do 8 or 9. But 3 Ironmans or actually 4 Ironmans for me this year in one kind of half distance race was a lot. And it was a lot of travel, also while balancing medical school and doing research and stuff like that. So by the end of the year, I was like, okay, I'm ready for some time at home. And yeah, so I guess that was kind of a low, if you will, but that's why you have the off season is to kind of recover from that. So, overall, I think the lows, if you will, were really more just lessons to be learned, more so than any really significant down points. And just, I mean, the travel's hard. It's fun to travel to all these places for races, but it's also exhausting because it takes 5 or 6 or 7 days out of your life. I shouldn't say out of your life because it's obviously a worthwhile experience, but it just takes a lot of time to pack all your stuff and then to travel and then to get ready for the race and then to pack up again and come back from the race and then unpack. and so there's a lot more that goes into it than just the one day that you're racing. And that kind of ends up wearing on you a little bit, especially while you're doing other things like medical school.
Yeah, it's some kind of extra stress for you then. And in preparation for the podcast, I had a look on your PTO stats and I saw, wow, he was doing 4 Ironman races within a year. That's a lot. So how do you recover from those races?
Yeah, so it's super important to take the recovery time between races. So it ends up being about a week to a week and a half of kind of easier workouts. One of the key things is to keep moving. So some days I'll even do like a little warm down bike ride after a race, like at like 4 or 5 p.m. I might get on the bike for 30 minutes just to kind of move the legs, because the key thing is like getting blood to your muscles, because that's what's going to help your body regenerate and recover, is getting nutrients to the areas that are broken down. So, it's really tempting to just sit on a beach and do nothing for a week after a race, but it's actually really super important to do something. And so generally, if I take time off, like after a race, I do take time, like if I take time off at all during the year, it is generally the week after a race, but I also make sure that I'm still working out a little bit during that time, because that movement is so critical. And then, you just kind of ease back into it. So you take 7 to 10 days of truly just easy stuff, and then you kind of slowly build back into it. And then by about week 2.5, you're kind of back up to speed for the most part. And then by the end of week 3 after a race, you're really truly kind of back to where you were in terms of training. So it makes it hard to do a lot of races, because if you have a race too close to each other, then it basically is like as soon as you're recovered, you're tapering again. And I don't really love that, because I want to feel like I'm getting better between races. But yeah, it's just the recovery aspect is super important. And so it's focusing on sleep and maybe getting a massage or eating well, kind of doing all those little things that you're supposed to do become really that much more important after a race as well. So.
I agree. I finished 1 Ironman in my life till now. And the first 2 days after it, I couldn't even move. It was hard to do some steps, for example. But then 3 days after my finish, I started to swim again. And suddenly I felt much better. And after 1 week, I was feeling quite well. And so I completely agree that movement after an Ironman is important, although it sounds a little bit strange. And you also mentioned the importance of sleep. And I would say that sleep is sometimes underrated in sports, especially when I think of some age groupers. They have a family, they have a demanding job. So they get up early at perhaps 5 a.m. and do their first session. Then they go to work. Then they take care of their kids. And in the evening, they do a second session. And then they go to bed very late at around 11 p.m. And so that's not the best thing for recovery. So what do you know about the science of sleep, and how can age groupers improve their sleep and their recovery?
Yeah, so sleep is one of the most important things I think that a triathlete can focus on and should focus on, because sleep is really important for recovery and in enabling your body to regenerate after a session. So, everyone likes to think that the improvements are made during a workout, and really that's just half of the story. You kind of set the stage to get better during a workout, but it's really sleep in the time between workouts when you actually get better, because that's when your body actually gets stronger. So sleep is super important, and I kind of have the same issues too, to an extent, since I'm, kind of balancing triathlon and my studies and research, and so I often have pretty early mornings. Thankfully, for the most part, I'm able to incorporate my second workout during the day, and instead of doing a workout late at night. But normally I'll do my first workout somewhere around 5 or 6 in the morning, and then I'll do my second workout somewhere around 4 to 6 in the evening. But yeah, it's definitely hard. I think the key thing is like more so than anything else is the consistency of your sleep. So making sure that you go to bed and you wake up at the same time every day is really important, even if you can't get a full amount of sleep. And then I also just think, it's a little harsh, or I guess maybe a little Spartan esque of me to say, but like sometimes I do think like, okay, is it more important for me to watch this TV show or to get an extra hour of sleep? And generally sleep wins out because that TV show might provide me with happiness for an hour while I watch it, but getting that extra hour of sleep will probably make me happy a lot more than just an hour the next day. So that's kind of how I think about getting, balancing sleep and versus kind of some other things. And I think as well, just being highly efficient with how you do your day is key. Like I try really hard to spend time with my friends and my girlfriend, every day, because having that social support network is important. And if I only trained and I only did research, I think that would not be good for my mental health. So I think it's important to keep those things in. But, the efficiency with which you do your work, I think is something that we all have control over. And, being more efficient with your work enables you to get more sleep. So, I think the real answer depends on every person, but it's just like sleep's super important. If you can't get enough sleep every night, focus on waking up and going to bed at the same time. And then, potentially throwing in a 25 to 30 minute power nap during the day as well is probably the next best thing that you can do. So, but really, the best key is to get enough sleep, but that's not realistic for everyone.
I agree. And on Saturday, I was on a party till 2 a.m. in the morning, and then I only slept 6 hours. And the next day, I was completely done. I have to admit, 10 years ago, it was different, but now I'm 32, and yeah, my body needs his recovery.
Yeah, definitely. As you get older, unfortunately, things get harder and harder to, that extra sleep becomes that much more important.
Yeah, definitely. But now let's talk a little bit more about your pro triathlon career. How has that pro license changed your life?
Um, I'd like to think that it really hasn't changed much. I hope that I'm still the same person that I was at the beginning of the year. I hope that I'm just as nice and just as thoughtful about people. And I hope that my kind of attitude towards the sport is the same. At the end of the day, for me, triathlon is kind of a nice stop on my life's journey. It's not my end goal. And so I'm really kind of just trying to enjoy it as much as I can, because I have some pros, they're trying to make a career out of this and retire, in the sport, either through coaching or then they'll, end up doing broadcasting or what have you. But, I think for me, like my timeline is more like 5 to 7 years at most. Whereas, some pros are looking for 20+ year timelines. So, the pro license I think has been cool. It's really fun to race in the pro field. And it's definitely like special. And I really try not to take it for granted because I know how hard some people really work to try and get that pro card. But for the most part, like each race it's another race. So like I try not to overthink things or really kind of build anything too far up, because at the end of the day, like whether you're an age grouper or you're a pro, you're still doing the same distance and you're still doing the same race for the most part. So
Yeah, when I listen to your words, I'm kind of surprised, and everything sounds that easy. Do you also have some problems you face or challenges you have to face?
oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of things that are challenging. I think I put a lot of my problems on myself. I I say yes a little too often to different things. So I sign up for too many projects or to help out people probably a little bit more than I should. So I definitely bring on some of my own stress and some of my own difficulties. But that's okay. Maybe someday I'll learn, but yeah, I think like in terms of, real true life adversities, I've been very fortunate in that I haven't really had any super significant problems. Like there was a period of time during kind of actually in the lead up to Kona where I lost my grandmother and my classmate 24 hours apart. So that was definitely kind of really challenging to go through, as well as balancing school and triathlon. But was able to get through that eventually, and then kind of suffered some burnout after that. But it's like I think as long as you take like a growth mindset towards everything, and also thinking about okay, like what are the lessons that I can learn from this? I think that any setback or any difficulty in the rear view mirror ends up looking not quite as bad as it feels like in the moment. So,
Yeah, and every setback is kind of gift because you can learn from it.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, I think, in the moment, some things feel really bad, but as long as you learn from it and you move forward, it's like, okay, maybe that was a good thing. Maybe it was good that that happened that way, even though in the moment it was definitely less than ideal.
Yes, I completely agree. And now let's talk about your upcoming race season 2024. What do you aim for in 2024 and how do you want to beat Rudy von Berg? Because he was in 2 races, he won the race and you came third.
Yeah, definitely. I have a lot of respect for Rudy as an athlete. I think he's a great athlete and a great competitor, and I look forward to doing some battles with him. I'm sure we will have a lot of battles together. I mean, he's a great swimmer and a great cyclist, so I think there will be some really good run showdowns coming up in the future. And then, for next year, we're still kind of waiting a little bit to hear exactly what the PTO schedule is like. So that might change things a little bit. But then, overall, my main focus will be the new Ironman Pro Series. So, unless something crazy happens, that'll be Ironman Texas will be my first race, and Ironman Lake Placid and Kona, and then probably 70.3 Chattanooga and 70.3 Mont Tremblant will be the main focus for next year, and then maybe we'll throw in some PTO races as well, depending on how things go. But I don't foresee adding more than maybe one or two of those, because again, I think 5 races is about the max that I can do in a season, and 6 we might be able to fit that in. But it's definitely starting to push the limits for me with the things that I have going on outside of triathlon.
If you have a view on your athletic profile, for me it's obvious that you have to focus on the new Ironman series because your strength is on the Ironman.
Yeah. So I was super happy when Ironman came out with their Pro Series because, the full distance racing is my strong suit, and so I was going to focus on that anyways next year, and so it's just really nice that Ironman is kind of encouraging that and supporting that as well, because I think professionally, there's probably been a little bit of a shift away from the full distance stuff in the past couple of years. And so I think it's really, and I think that's really the heart of the sport. Like, I agree that middle distance stuff like the PTO 100K race and 70.3s are more accessible for age groupers. And that's kind of like one of the faster growing segments within triathlon. But for me, I think the full distance Ironman is still really where kind of the heart and soul of the sport lays. And it's also what I'm best at. So I'm really glad to see that there's support for pros to kind of focus on that distance next year.
I can completely understand, and I think it's good for the sport. The PTO and also Ironman, they are doing something for pro triathletes, and now you have more possibilities to earn money and to make a living by being a pro athlete.
Yep, definitely. I think it will only do good things for the sport. So I'm really glad that some money is being thrown behind it, because at the end of the day, like most professionals, they kind of need a couple of years to build and become really great. And so having kind of a little bit more money in there to encourage someone to spend an extra year, I think will only do the sport good things. Whereas otherwise, maybe people would have quit before really they hit their prime.
Yeah, and do you also have some goals in your medical studies for the next year?
Yeah, I mean, write a lot of papers, do some research, and finish some of the projects that I've started is kind of the overall goal. We have a really cool study going on about using kind of different biosensors for surgeons and figuring out how we can improve surgeon performance. So I'm really excited about that, as well as another study that I'm leading using glucose monitors in cancer patients to understand how chemotherapy and different drugs that cancer patients are given impacts their glucose regulation. So those are kind of the two big projects that I'm looking forward to kind of continuing and finishing this coming year.
Okay, I understand, and it sounds demanding, but also very interesting. And I wish you all the best for your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it'll be a good year.
For sure. So, one last question. Of course, being a pro athlete and being a medical student, that's very demanding, but you also need some support of your family and your friends. And how has your surrounding environment, including family and friends, influenced both your triathlon and academic pursuits?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, I cannot stress enough how important my family and friends have been in enabling me to do what I do. Like, quite simply, I would not be where I'm at without them, because even at the pro level, you still really need someone there at race day to kind of help you, kind of, with your splits or just kind of handling your gear, kind of taking care of a lot of those little things. And so really without that support, I just quite simply would be almost an impossible task to handle all the travel arrangements and all the logistics of a lot of the stuff of being a pro triathlete entails without my family in particular there to support me. So, and like I think as well, I give a lot of kudos to my friends for being supportive of the fact that I can't necessarily always stay out super late, or maybe I'll only be able to hang out once a month instead of once a week, just because I don't have as much free time as most people my age do. So all of that, I would say, like, it's really that's why I say that triathlon is a team sport. I might be the person that gets the credit and the attention, but really it's like the people behind the scenes that actually make everything happen. And without them, like, I would not be as good or as successful as I have been.
And those people need more attention. And I also have the impression that your girlfriend plays a significant role in your life.
Yeah, she does. She's definitely one of the biggest pieces of support behind my family, and she's also a medical student, and so the fact that she has been super supportive of me doing triathlon and medical school, I just can't say enough good things about that. And she comes to every race that she can. She's not able to come to everything because sometimes she just isn't able to get that time off, but she comes whenever she can. And I mean, for Ironman Florida, that literally meant she flew down the morning of the race and saw me on the run, and then we drove back the next day. So yeah, I mean, it's just that kind of level of support and commitment that I think really makes everything that much better.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'm just an age grouper, but without the support of my girlfriend, it would not be possible to do age group sports on a certain level besides a normal job and besides the podcast. So I'm very grateful for my girlfriend that she supports me that much. And I think those podcasts are also there to say thank you to some people that have a big influence in your life.
Absolutely, yeah. So, if anyone is listening, I think, and has helped me kind of along the way, thank you so much. There's too many people to list because I will inevitably forget someone, but thank you for all your help and support for making it all happen.
Yeah, Matthew, it's been fantastic having you on Klartext Triathlon. It was a real honor. I really enjoyed our conversation. When will you go back to the US? to the USA?
Yeah, I head back tomorrow. Really wanted to try and keep this trip as short as possible because I have things to do back in the US, of course. So not really keeping this one that long. I'm also going to Hawaii in a couple weeks for a medical conference. So trying to keep the long distance travel to the minimum. So.
And I hope you will have a second journey to Hawaii in October 2024.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't wait back. Can't wait to be back to Kona and this time racing the pro field.
Well, wishing you the best for the future and all your endeavors, Matthew. Do you still have any final words for our listeners or a question for me?
Oh, I mean, I would say just thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to come onto a podcast and especially, I guess, maybe talk to some different audiences than just kind of American-based ones. And I guess, I don't know, a question for you, I guess, would be what's the thing that you're looking forward to the most in 2024?
Well, I have a very luxurious situation at the moment. I'm on my sabbatical, and it will end it will end in September. So there's still some time left, and I try to train a little bit to enjoy my Ironman in Nice, and of course also meet new people and learn new things. For example, at the moment I am in Gran Canaria, and it's very multicultural, and I got in touch with so many different people from different countries, and I really appreciate that. And I hope to have a lot of moments like this in 2024. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And thank you so much, and all the best for you, Matthew.
Thank you. All the best to you too. Thanks again for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Dear listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Matthew Marquardt as much as I did. It's truly impressive how he balances a triathlon career with a medical career. I have a few assignments for you. Subscribe to the channel, rate it with 5 stars, and recommend it to others. Of course, we also appreciate coffee donations via PayPal. Additionally, you should quickly check the websites of the OMNi-BiOTiC Epsilon Triathlon and the OMNi-BiOTiC Klartext Triathlon to secure your spot for 2024 and have a unique experience. You can find all the information in the show notes as well. And in that spirit, all the best and continue to have fun listening. Yours, Alex. End of advertisement.